You're stuck in a loop. It's 2 a.m. The house is quiet, but your head is screaming. You're staring at the ceiling, or maybe at the floor, and the weight sitting on your chest feels like a physical hand pressing down. You just did it again. The thing you hate the most. It's the habit you swore you'd buried 3 weeks ago. Now, the silence of the night feels like an accusation you can't escape. For 14 days, maybe 21 if you were feeling spiritual, you were doing great. You were clean. You felt like a new person, finally free from the chains. But then, a bad day at work happened. A stressful phone call. A moment of deep, biting loneliness. And just like that, the loop closed. You're back at the start, wondering if those 3 weeks were just a fluke or a cruel joke you played on yourself. Now comes the part that hurts worse than the sin itself. The prayer. You know the one. The, "I'm so sorry, God, I really mean it this time" prayer. But as the words leave your lips, they feel like ash. You feel like a total hypocrite. You think to yourself, God has to be tired of this. He's seen this script. He knows the ending. Why would he even bother listening to a broken record like me? You know, Apostle Paul had this same exact feeling. In Romans 7:15, he writes something that sounds like it was taken straight out of your personal journal. "For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate." Think about that. Paul felt like he didn't understand his own hands. It's a glitch in the matrix moment where your heart and body disagree. Here's how the loop works mechanically. First, there is the trigger: stress, boredom, or exhaustion. Then the relapse. Your flesh seeks a shortcut to peace or pleasure. Finally, the crash, immediate, soul-crushing guilt. We think the problem is just the relapse phase, but the loop is actually a survival mechanism of the flesh. It's a biological and spiritual trap that feeds on your exhaustion and your need for a quick escape. After the crash, you enter the white-knuckle phase. For 2 to 3 weeks, you use pure willpower to stay good because you're terrified of God's anger. But here's the problem. Willpower is a battery, not a power plant. Eventually, the battery runs out of juice. You get tired, you get hungry, or you get stressed. And because you haven't changed the source of your power, you hit the reset button and start all over again. We think the problem is a lack of effort. We think if we just tried 10% harder, we'd stay clean forever. But Galatians 5:17 tells us something different. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the spirit, and the spirit what is contrary to the flesh. It's not a lack of effort, it's a war of natures. And right now, you're trying to win a high-stakes nuclear war using nothing but a tiny water pistol. Imagine you're trapped in a labyrinth. You want to get out, and you can even see the exit sign in the distance. But there's a catch. The floor is a massive industrial magnet, and you are wearing heavy iron boots. This labyrinth represents your life. The exit is holiness. And those boots? Those are your sinful nature. Every step you take is a monumental struggle against a force that is literally pulling you down. When you are full of spiritual energy, maybe after a great service or a good morning, you have the temporary strength to lift your feet. You're making progress. You're 10 yards closer to the exit. You think, I finally figured it out. I'm finally walking. You start to believe that the magnet has lost its power over you. But the magnet isn't gone. You're just working overtime to ignore it. Here's the thing about magnets. They never sleep. They don't get tired. You, however, do. After 2 weeks of walking, your legs start to ache. Life happens. A bill you can't pay, a fight with a friend. You take a breath, just for a second, and let your guard down. In the moment you stop actively fighting the pull, click. The magnet snaps your boots back to the floor. You don't just stop, you slide. Because the floor of the labyrinth is tilted toward the center, you don't just stay where you tripped, you slide all the way back to the middle. This is why we feel like hypocrites. We think our walking was our new identity, but the sliding feels like our true reality. We tell God, I'll never put the boots back on, while ignoring the fact that the boots are literally bolted to our ankles and the floor. And now comes the guilt. Praying becomes a heavy burden, so you start hiding. You think God is up there with a clipboard, crossing out your name. That's the 45th time this month. I think we're done here. But look at Proverbs 24:16. For the righteous falls 7 times and rises again. Notice it doesn't say the righteous never falls. It says they fall and they get back up. When you come to God with that lame apology, you aren't surprising him. He isn't disappointed because he expected better of you. He's disappointed because you expected better of yourself than he did. Psalm 103:14 says, For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. He's not looking at you like a drill sergeant looks at a failing recruit. He's looking at you like a father looks at a toddler learning to walk. Sometimes the guilt we feel isn't even godly sorrow. It's actually pride. We are mad at ourselves because we thought we were stronger than we actually are. We wanted to be the hero who conquered the sin, but we failed. God isn't asking for your perfection. He's asking for your presence. He wants the you that is stuck in the mud, not the perfect version of you that doesn't actually exist yet. So, how do we break the loop? If willpower is a failing battery, what's the alternative? The answer is found in a word we often hate because it sounds like giving up: surrender. In the magnetic labyrinth, you cannot walk out on your own strength. You have to be lifted out. Breaking the cycle starts when you stop trying to fix yourself and start allowing yourself to be rescued by the only one with the power. First, you have to stop the 2-week lie. Stop telling yourself that if you make it 21 days, you're fixed. Habits are great for your lifestyle, but Christ is the savior, not your days clean streak on a phone app. When you stop counting days and start counting moments of dependence on God, the pressure changes. You aren't performing for a grade anymore. You are living in a relationship with a Savior who already knows the score. We talk about crucifying the flesh like it's a DIY project. But think about the mechanics of a crucifixion. You can't nail your own second hand to the cross. Someone else has to do it for you. Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. The loop breaks when you stop saying, I will try harder, and start saying, God, I can't. You do it. If you're watching this and you feel like the biggest fraud in your church or your family, I want you to hear this. Your sin is not a surprise to God, but your return is a joy to Him. There's a story Jesus told about a son who wasted everything in a pigsty. He practiced a lame apology, thinking his father would hate him. He thought he had to earn his way back into the house by working. Luke 15:20 says, But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The father didn't wait for the apology to be sincere enough. He didn't check to see if the son had been clean for 3 weeks first. He ran while the son still smelled like the pigsty. That is God's heart for you right now. You aren't a hypocrite for struggling. You're a human in a war. If you weren't a child of God, you wouldn't even care that you fell. The guilt you feel is proof that the Spirit is still in you. So stop the walking contest. Don't just close this video. Take 5 minutes right now. No scripts, no big words. Write in the comment, Lord, I'm in the labyrinth. I'm stuck. Please lift me out. He's already running toward you.